Leela Jacinto from our International Affairs Desk is with me here on set. Leela, Sudan gripped by fighting between these two warring generals. First of all, give us an update on where we are. What's the latest?
Well, Sudan is careening towards being a failed state, which is a tragedy not just for Sudanese, but also for the Horn of Africa region and the Sahel to its west. Now, as you said, the two warring generals separately declared ceasefires, but even the manner in which they did it is indicative how deep this crisis is. First, it was Hemedti. He's the leader of the paramilitary RSF forces. His real name is General Dagalo. He was the first to declare a ceasefire for Eid. But in the same message, he also announced that he was setting up a special committee to investigate violations against civilians. Then on late Tuesday, the army chief, General Burhan, declared his ceasefire for the Eid holiday. And in the same message, he called on young men to join the armed forces. So implicit in these ceasefire announcements is the fact that violations are being committed against civilians, and two, the fighting will continue. There have been a string of ceasefire deals since the U.S. and Saudi Arabia held talks in the Saudi port city of Jeddah last month. But none of these ceasefires have really held. So, hopes are not high for these ceasefires holding. And even if they do, it's somewhat in some places, it doesn't look like the fighting is going to stop. And meanwhile, the humanitarian situation is just getting worse. The death toll, according to Sudan's health ministry, has exceeded 3,000. This is just from April 15, when fighting broke out. And as you said, there are more than 2.5 million people displaced. And by October, the UN predicts that more than 1 million people are going to cross borders. The initial exodus came from the Khartoum area, where these two generals were battling for key sites and installations. But now what we are seeing over the past few weeks is that a lot of the exodus is actually from the Darfur region. Now, this is a region we've been familiar with, and it looks like the situation there is turning very alarming.
Yeah, Darfur reaching alarming levels, the UN warning, and taking on a worrying ethnic dimension now. Give us the latest from Darfur, because the crisis really is playing out there now, isn't it?
Look, what's important to note is when this latest round of fighting broke out, all Sudanese, the overwhelming majority, were against both generals. So, it was not a case of this falling into a civil war where, some groups back one general against other groups backing another general. That was not the case. But what's happening right now is that these old problems in the Darfur area are surfacing with this conflict. Now, if you look at the Darfur region, this is a vast region in Western Sudan. It is divided into 5 states, and the reports that are coming in of fighting are pretty much from across the Darfur area. There are reports of Arab militia targeting tribes around the Al-Fashir area. This is the capital of North Darfur. El Janina, the capital of West Darfur, is completely cut off from communication right now. But people who fled across the border into Chad have accounts of Arab militia shooting and killing civilians trying to flee into Chad. And the latest reports, which I've been seeing on social media, is coming from El Janina. This is the capital of Central Darfur. So this is across the border. When it comes to Darfur, both these generals have a history in this region. General Burhan rose up the army ranks when he was fighting for the previous strongman Omar al-Bashir to put down a rebellion in Darfur. Hemedti has a very disturbing track record in Darfur. He was the head of the Janjaweed. This is an Arab militia group that fought for Bashir. The Janjaweed is accused of atrocities in Darfur. The ICC, the International Criminal Court, is still investigating war crimes committed over there. The fighting, which flared up in 2003, died down, but the underlying issues, the ethnic problems, the scramble for resources, still continues. And what's happening with this conflict is that Arab militias are seizing on this conflict to target tribes, mostly the Masalit tribes, and witness accounts say that there are RSF fighters in this. So it looks like the RSF is once again repeating what happened 10 years ago.
Almost out of time, Leela. Just time to ask you, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? What can be done?
I mean, this is a difficult one. I mean, the two generals obviously think that this is a zero-sum game. What the international community can do is, one, the U.S. needs to nominate a special envoy to Sudan, who will at least focus attention on that. And two, it looks like peace talks should start. What's been happening now is, calls for a ceasefire. They never hold, as we know, but there's no move to actually address the issues. What can happen is that peace talks can begin. They can settle on some very initial issues, and, the more difficult ones can be dealt with later. But until such time as the peace talks start, just these calls for ceasefire is really not bringing an end to this problem.
Leela, thanks very much. Leela Jacinto from our